This intuition started to turn into an argument that I ran by various philosophers over the years, since about 2012, actually, various philosophers, that there is some sort of causal explanation that is necessary to explain the soul, and not just a broadly theistic explanation, although that's true, and I argue that in the book, that there is a need for a theistic explanation, that in order to make sense of the whole universe in which there are rational creatures, we need God to explain that, but also a more direct causal explanation in God himself, or something like God, a supernatural being of the sort. And so this intuition stood with me and stayed with me, and I discussed this intuition since 2012 with a variety of philosopher friends, Tallifer, Richard Swinburne, Bruce Gordon, and my own host, supervisor, Oliver Crisp, and many others over the years. And that particular intuition developed into an argument, and that argument was came out in this book, The Creation of Self. And in it, I argue, it's kind of a partly mainstream, partly academic, and I give some of the general evidences that I see as a coherent sort of cumulative case for the soul in the beginning. That's for the sort of the mainstream intellectual reader. But then from there, I develop the intuition out further in arguing against various views that suggest that we as persons are material beings through and through, that we are basically just our bodies or our animals or our human being itself. And that I argue that sort of position actually is directly confronted with certain evidential reasons that would favor, in fact, something like substance dualism, the idea that I am a soul-body composite. And further, that because the material or natural process, biological process, is insufficient for accounting for personal identity. In fact, something else is required, it seems, something like an agential cause, an agent itself, something like a supernatural being, an intelligent agent, even something like a God or God himself. And so that becomes the occupation of the book, the argument that I give herein. And so it's an argument that some of the naturalistic or pseudo-naturalistic explanations, causal explanations for how it is that humans come into being or minds come into being, are themselves insufficient explanations. And that seems right. Once we take seriously the fact of first-person perspectives, and we take seriously the fact of consciousness and the kind of consciousness that we as human beings have, and the various properties or features that are characteristic of our own consciousness, then we are confronted with the fact that that is something that is not just a property or a capacity that could be had by an animal or a material being or a body, but it's something that itself is substantial itself. It must be substantial. And for it to be substantial, effectively, it must be a substantial kind of thing that's other than the body, something other than the physical being or aggregate that makes this up, the animal body itself. It must be something other that is the carrier of these certain unique kinds of properties, these certain unique kinds of properties of consciousness, first-person consciousness. And so when we take that seriously, then some sort of causal story or explanation is necessarily required for that.